All right, we're going to be solving by factoring. Okay, this is 3.4. Here's what you have to understand. We've been doing a lot of multiplying out, right? We've been taking, and right now we've been doing complex numbers, but you have done things before that look like this, and you have foiled them out, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you do, you would get 2x squared minus x plus 6x, and I'm intentionally showing you this in slow, drawn-out steps like this because I really want you to make the connection between factoring and definitely. All right, so what you've done right now is you've multiplied and you've gone through combined like terms and then you've simplified. What factoring is factoring takes this and makes it become this. It's the backwards of foiling out, basically, is what it is, okay? We're going to do this by a method I call grouping. Well, we all call grouping in the whole math world. It is factor by grouping. So what we'll do is we'll come up with these two numbers, and I want you to notice something about this before I show you grouping. Notice that these two we added together, they give you this one in the middle, okay? That is going to be key because we're going to have to find those two values now. And once we find those, then we can go from there. All right, backbone of factoring is understanding greatest common factor. What is a greatest common factor? A GCF, but what is it? Okay, you're thinking multiple, but it's not a multiple.
What the number share?
It's like you get 2 times 24. It's the greatest number that they all go.
Exactly. It's the greatest number that will divide into all of them with no remainder. So if I asked you, if I had like, actually, yeah, let's do 6 and 9. What's the greatest common factor? 3. What if I had 12x squared and 15x? What's the greatest common factor? Even bigger than just 3, 3x. Can't I divide both of those by x? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the greatest common factor and we're going to have to take it out. Remember this is, if you have to remember this is backwards of multiplying. So we're thinking dividing, okay? So if I had something, Lizzie just keeps smiling, you love this, don't you? If I had something like 2x squared plus 8x, and I said factor out the greatest common factor. Don't divide those two, get 2, right, 2 what? 2x. If you took that out and you backwards distributed that 2x, what would be left over? Plus 4. Okay, right? Because whenever I distribute it, I have to get back to what I started with. That is the most basic form of factoring. Okay, and let me show you why it's handy before I show you how to factor. If this equaled 0 and I needed to solve that for x, okay, equals 0. When you have to, and think about this and it makes a lot of sense. If you have 2 or more things that multiply together to give you 0, what has to happen? At least one of them's got to be 0, right? There's no other way to get 0 when you multiply. So either this is 0 or this is 0. Are we all in agreement? Okay. That's how we're going to solve. We're going to get it factored down. We're going to make it equal 0, get it factored down so that we can solve to find. Remember, what we're really finding when it equals 0 is what? The x-intercepts, the solutions, the zeros of the... And remember, most of these parabolas cross 2 times. Yeah. So you see my 2 answers here? Yeah. Okay. All right, so let me show you with a trinomial how we are going to do this. I have a handout for you. Let me pause through it with you quickly. So if you look at the top, there's an example. We are going to factor through that example and then talk about, and we're not solving on this one, we are simply factoring. Yes. All right, so your first step is to look at the entire equation and see if you can factor out a GCF. So I'm looking at the equation overall. Is there a GCF? 2, right? Everybody can be divided by 2. 4 doesn't go into 14. Say that again. That's what I did. Well, I divided by 2 and got x equals 0. Well, you can divide this side by 2, but you're not going to divide it by 2x because you want to get the variable by itself. So you wouldn't divide by the variable. You don't want it, right? Yeah. All right, so when I take the 2 out, I'm left with, and I'm going to put the 2 on the outside, 6x squared plus 7x plus 2. Okay? Here's where the magic happens. You will hear lots of different teachers do lots of different methods for factoring, but at the end of the day, the puzzle part remains for any method that you use, okay? You have to multiply the first and the last terms together, all right, the A and the C. What in this case is A times C? 12. Why will my pen not work? All right, so the puzzle part is you have to find 2 numbers that multiply to 12, okay? If this was a negative, I'd have to watch those signs. But it has to add to what's in the middle. So what 2 numbers multiply to 12 but add to 7?
3 and 4.
3 and 4. That is the hardest part. If you can GCF and you can find those 2 values, you can factor.
Wait, why are we coming from that?
All right, A times C. Follow along on your sheet. It's typed out on your sheet for you, okay? A times C is 12. So I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to 12, but they have to add to what you see in the middle. So 3 plus 4 is 7, and 3 times 4 is 12. This tells me, remember backwards distributing, backwards foiling? Remember how I had those 2 x's in the middle and I said I was going to have to find what those 2 were?
Oh, you just did.
So I just did. They are 3x and 4x. Remember, this is the total, every single step you do in foiling, you're doing here, but you're doing it backwards. Okay? So now what I want to do, look at this as 2 separate problems. We're going to look at them separately. We're going to break them up for right now, and we'll put them back together. Ignore this 2 right now. What is the GCF of these 2? 3x. What's left if you take a 3x out of the first 2? 2x plus, what happens if you do 3x divided by 3? 1. Remember, what you got to end up with, you're backwards distributing. So if you use it all, you got to hold the place for the 1. Always keep this middle sign. 6x squared divided by 3x. Greatest common factor. How about 4x and 2? 2. What's left? A bracket?
Yeah, there's a bracket on that.
Oh, it can. It doesn't matter. All right. So now, do you notice that this and this are exactly the same?
It's crazy.
Okay. I'm going to pull, just like I can pull an x out of something, right? I'm going to pull out a 2x plus 1. I'm pulling out a whole chunk. And what's left, if I take it away from both of them, is 3x plus 2. And this is completely factored. Okay, so think about it like this. Guys, if y'all would quit complaining so much and listen, you might understand. Think about if I have two things and you pulled, let's say I had 3xy plus 2y. And I told you to take out the greatest common factor, what would it be? Y, right? And what would be left when you did that? My y is 2x plus 1. I'm taking that whole chunk as a factor out. You see it? Once you see it, it makes sense. You're taking out that whole, you're letting a whole chunk be a factor, and you're putting it out front. So literally, if I could take this chunk and distribute it here and here, I would end back up with what I started.
My question is, where did you get the plus two?
There, it's in front of the other 2x plus 1.
Right here. Yep.
Yeah, where'd that come from?
That's what I factored out of 4x plus 2.
I'm just like trying to grasp it. If you look at it without the 2 in front of the last part of the equation and just look at 2, like just double it. Like double what's in the front of it.
If you pulled out that 2, why wouldn't the 2 just go away? And why do you have a plus 1? On the second to last step, you have 4x plus 2, but you said you
I
pulled
pulled
out
a 2 out of this
So
here.
why do you keep a 1?
So because you're dividing the backwards of, you're dividing it everything by it, so that if I were to distribute it back out, would I end back up with what I started? Okay. If you don't have a GCF, you can always GCF a 1. You can always divide things by 1. I could always, if I had 3x plus 2 and I said, hey, what's the GCF? Well, there's not one, but I could always say 1 times 3x plus 2. That would be a GCF. Let's look at another one. These take practice, and I realize that. Let's do one that's got some different signs here. This is an easy one because the leading coefficient is 1, and if the leading coefficient is ever 1, it makes an easy factor. Okay. This one came from the back. But no, you'll have more than that this weekend. All right, so A times C is what? Negative 12. Now watch very carefully. This is the nice thing about grouping. When you're grouping, your signs work themselves out, okay? What multiplies to negative 12 but adds to negative 4?
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
2 and 6 and 4. No, it's 6 and...
I pledge allegiance to
I'm going to
Regent
record
Flavor
over
Sweets.
this because I want to finish
Those
this.
players are Emily Guy, Eliza Reed,
It's got to multiply to
Madison
negative 12
Montgomery,
but add to
Jenna
negative
McCoy,
4, right?
Emily Thomas, and Imani Wyatt. Congratulations
Negative
to the varsity
6 plus 2
volleyball
is
team
negative
for defeating
4.
Catawba Ridge in a
But negative 6
5-set thriller
times 2
last
is
night.
negative 12. You
Grace
gotta
Montgomery,
watch the
Lily
signs.
Joseph,
Okay.
and Novi Locke led the team in hitting.
I'm
Olivia
gonna write
Bishop
this-
had 4 kill blocks and was a key
This
server
way
to
to
help
show
pull
you
out
what
the win.
happens when there's a negative.
Catherine
in the middle.
Raven, Novi Locke, and Aaliyah Tucker led the team in passing. Monday, October 7th, the junior class ring ceremony will begin at
GCF.
7 p.m. in the auditorium. Students who are participating are expected to dress
1X.
appropriately for this program. For young men, we encourage khaki pants and collared shirts.
What's
For young
left?
ladies, we encourage dresses or dress pants and shirts. Jeans, shorts, flip-flops are not appropriate attire.
Remember I
The
told
volleyball
you,
teams have kicked off their
this
Dig Pink
sign has to
fundraising
stay.
campaign to raise money
Has
for
to
local
stay.
cancer patients. Their Dig Pink event is Wednesday, October 9th.
What's-
Everyone is
What'd
encouraged
you
to wear
say?
pink on October 9th.
Minus 6.
By popular request, the
Why is
second
it
order
plus
of Dig
2,
Pink
Connor?
shirts are in. Get your shirts from
what
Coach
did you
Wilson,
factor out?
any volleyball player,
Negative 6.
or in the library.
You factored
Shirts
out
are
a negative
$10.
6. When you distribute it, it's got to come back
Attention
negative.
students in the Upward Bound program. The bus will
If
leave
the
at 7
middle
a.m.
sign
on
is
Saturday.
negative, the
Be
last
at
sign
CHS
changes.
before 7 a.m. Theater Club will have a mandatory meeting today at lunch. Go grab your lunch and then meet in Mrs. Dollar's room by 11:35. Attention all students wishing to join the Relay for Life team, Please meet in Mrs. Watts' room, room 108, today at 11:35. There will be an open house on Saturday at the Woolard Technology Center
That's
from
one time.
9 to 11:30.
All right,
Learn more
listen.
about the programs at our district's
I
technology
know
center.
this is not
There will
enough
be
for you to get
demonstrations
started
of
on
the
your
programs
homework. I'm
offered
gonna
at
make
the
an ed puzzle
WTC.
this afternoon. And I'm gonna put it up for you, okay? It'll either be an ed
On
puzzle or just a
Friday,
video, I
we
don't
will
know.
have a mystery
Depends on
reader
how long I
share one
have
of the
it. Let me
rules.
pause.